Justin Gaethje just told the world exactly how he plans to fight Ilia Topuria. He's going to walk forward. He's going to apply pressure. He's going to put himself in dangerous positions, and he's going to trust his chin to survive whatever comes back at him. And the problem with that plan, the fundamental, structural, potentially career-ending problem with that plan, is that we have already seen what happens when a fighter decides to walk forward and eat shots against Ilia Topuria. Charles Oliveira tried it. One of the greatest finishers in the history of the lightweight division, a man with over 30 submission victories, a man who had beaten Justin Gaethje himself, walked forward against Topuria and got knocked out so cleanly and so completely that the replay was uncomfortable to watch. And Gaethje is telling us, weeks before the biggest fight of his career, that he is going to do the same thing. Before we go any further, let's be precise about what Gaethje actually said, because the words matter here. He was asked directly about his approach to the Topuria fight. He acknowledged that walking forward puts him in dangerous positions. And then he said that he has to do it anyway. That is not a tactical statement. That is a philosophical statement. That is a man telling you that his identity as a fighter, his entire self-conception of how he competes, requires him to move toward the danger rather than away from it. And there is something genuinely admirable about that. Justin Gaethje has built one of the most spectacular careers in UFC history on exactly that mentality. 15 bonuses. Every fight a war. Every opponent forced to confront the fact that this man simply does not stop coming. That mentality has produced highlight moments that will live in the sport forever. It has also produced a specific and well-documented pattern of damage accumulation that becomes a serious problem the moment you put him in the cage with someone who hits as hard as Ilia Topuria. Let's talk about the stylistic matchup in real technical terms, because this is where the conversation needs to go beyond the surface level. Topuria is a front-weighted boxer. His power comes from loading onto the front foot, creating leverage for his lead hand and his cross. He is not a particularly high-volume striker in the way that Max Holloway is. He doesn't win by throwing more punches than you. He wins by throwing the right punch at the right moment with devastating accuracy and timing. His knockout of Alexander Volkanovski, a man considered nearly unbeatable at featherweight at that point, came from exactly that kind of precision. His knockout of Holloway was similar. His knockout of Charles Oliveira was perhaps the clearest demonstration of all, because Oliveira is not a static opponent. He moves, he creates angles, he has been in elite fights for over a decade. And Topuria still found him with a shot that ended everything almost instantly. Now consider what Justin Gaethje's forward pressure actually gives Topuria to work with. When a fighter walks forward without angles, without level changes, without the kind of lateral movement that makes timing difficult, they are essentially creating a predictable attack line for a counterpuncher to exploit. Topuria doesn't need you to stand still. He just needs you to be readable. And a fighter moving in a straight line, absorbing shots, trusting his chin, and trying to land something back, that is the most readable pattern that exists in striking. It is the pattern that the counterpuncher's entire system is designed to punish. Topuria will see it coming. He has seen it before. He finished it before. And Gaethje is arriving with that exact blueprint. The Charles Oliveira comparison deserves more examination than it usually gets, because people sometimes dismiss it as simple MMA mathematics. Fighter A beat Fighter B who beat Fighter C doesn't always mean what it seems to mean. But in this specific case, the comparison is not just about results. It's about mechanics. Oliveira, like Gaethje, is a fighter who operates best when he is able to impose himself physically and make the fight uncomfortable. Oliveira does it with grappling threats and forward pressure. Gaethje does it with leg kicks and the constant threat of his overhand right. Both of them need to be the aggressor to be effective. Both of them struggle when an opponent refuses to be intimidated by the forward march and instead stays composed, reads the timing, and counters with accuracy. That is specifically what Topuria does better than almost anyone in the sport. He does not get rattled by pressure. He gets curious about it. He reads it and he responds to it with precision that is almost clinical. There is also a conditioning element here that is not getting enough attention. Justin Gaethje fought Paddy Pimblett for the interim lightweight title, and while he won that fight, it was not a clean performance. It was competitive. Pimblett made it a war. Gaethje absorbed significant damage across multiple rounds. And the interim title fight was not that long ago. The timeline between that fight and the Topuria fight at the White House is compressed. Gaethje has not had an extended recovery window. He has not had months to fully reset his body, refresh his nervous system, and come into this camp at 100%. He is going into the most important fight of his life, against the most dangerous opponent of his career, on a schedule that does not favor optimal physical preparation. And his strategy, as stated publicly, is to absorb damage and trust his durability. Against a man who broke Charles Oliveira in one round. Against a man who hurt Max Holloway, a fighter with perhaps the best chin in featherweight history, in a fight that most people thought Holloway had a legitimate chance to win. Let's spend some time on what Gaethje would actually need to do differently to give himself a real chance in this fight, because the point here is not simply to write him off. The point is to identify the gap between what he's saying he'll do and what the evidence suggests he needs to do. The first adjustment is obvious to anyone who has watched his career carefully: the low kick. Gaethje is one of the premier low kick practitioners in the sport. He made Khabib Nurmagomedov, Khabib, the man who won everything and lost to essentially nobody, visibly limp in the first round of their fight. He has damaged legs consistently throughout his career, and he uses leg damage to create the openings that his hands exploit. Against Topuria specifically, the low kick has a mechanical advantage because of Topuria's front-weighted stance. That front leg is exposed. It is slower to move when weight is loaded onto it. A sustained, disciplined low kick attack could disrupt Topuria's offensive base, slow his footwork, and gradually take away the platform from which his power is generated. That is the intelligent path into this fight. The second adjustment is patience on the feet. Gaethje actually has more tactical sophistication than his reputation suggests. Watch his fights carefully and you will see a man who creates angles, who exits combinations, who manages the clinch intelligently. The problem is that his instinct, especially when he feels the fight slipping, is to accelerate into exchanges rather than slow down and operate from a distance. Against Topuria, accelerating into exchanges is precisely the wrong response to adversity. Every time Gaethje shortens the distance in a straight line and starts trading, he is entering the exact zone where Topuria is most dangerous and most accurate. The intelligent Gaethje, the version Trevor Whitman has been trying to develop in this camp, would operate at range, use the jab and the leg kick to create distance management problems, and wait for Topuria to overcommit before engaging. The emotional Gaethje, the one who talks about moving forward and accepting dangerous positions, will try to bully his way through it and find out the hard way what Oliveira found out. The third element is the wrestling option, and this is the one that almost nobody is discussing seriously. Both Gaethje and Topuria have genuine wrestling credentials. Both of them have made deliberate choices throughout their careers to compete primarily on the feet. Gaethje in particular has built his entire brand around the idea of the stand-up war, the man who gave up a Division I wrestling background to become a striker because that's what the crowd wants to see. But brand and survival are different things. And if Gaethje finds himself in a fight where his chin is getting tested by precision leather from a man who is faster, more accurate, and better positioned, the wrestling option becomes not a stylistic preference but a survival mechanism. A takedown buys time. A clinch forces a reset. A change of level disrupts the rhythm of a striker who is finding his range. Gaethje has the tools to do this. Whether his pride will allow it in the moment is a genuinely open question. What makes all of this particularly significant is the timing of the White House event itself. This is not just a UFC card. This is the most high-profile setting in the history of the sport. The cameras are different. The audience is different. The global reach of this card is unlike anything that has come before it. And a first-round knockout, which is not an unlikely outcome given what we've analyzed, becomes one of the defining images of the event. Topuria holding the belt at the White House is already a powerful visual. Topuria finishing Gaethje cleanly and quickly in that setting makes a statement to the entire sport about where the power is in the lightweight and featherweight landscape. For Gaethje, a bad night here doesn't just cost him the title. It potentially defines the final chapter of how his career is remembered. He is 37 years old. He has been one of the most entertaining fighters of his generation. But entertainment and legacy are different currencies, and a dominant loss in the biggest setting the sport has ever provided is a difficult thing to recover from narratively. None of this is to say that Justin Gaethje cannot win this fight. The left hook exists. The overhand right exists. The leg kicks exist. In any single exchange, in any single moment, a fighter with Gaethje's power can change everything. That is exactly why he is still Justin Gaethje and not just a guy who used to fight. But the strategy he has publicly committed to, moving forward, accepting danger, trusting his body to absorb and survive, is the strategy that gives Ilia Topuria the maximum amount of opportunity to do exactly what he does best. It is the strategy that Oliveira essentially followed and paid for immediately. It is the strategy that asks Topuria to miss, repeatedly, under pressure, against a man whose entire body language says he will not go away. And Topuria doesn't miss that much. Especially not when the target is coming to him. The optimistic scenario for Gaethje fans is round 1. It has to be round 1. If Gaethje can land something heavy in the opening minutes, if the pressure and the early aggression creates a moment where Topuria gets caught before he fully settles into his rhythm, then the fight changes. Topuria has been hurt before. Jay Herbert put him on the canvas. He is not invincible. But getting to that moment requires Gaethje to execute with a level of precision and timing that his stated game plan actively works against. You cannot be both a forward-marching pressure fighter who accepts dangerous positions and a precise counterstriker who catches a composure-based champion in a moment of vulnerability. Those are different roles. They require different approaches. And right now, Gaethje is telling the world he's going to play the role that ends badly. Topuria wins this fight. The method is knockout, most likely before the end of round 2. The story of how it happens is already being written by Gaethje himself in every press conference and every interview where he explains his plan. The only remaining question is whether the execution matches the words, or whether something in the actual experience of the cage, the nerves, the atmosphere, the reality of the moment, produces a different Gaethje than the one who has been talking. That would be the surprise. That would be the version of events worth preparing for. But based on what we know, based on what the tape shows, and based on what the man himself has told us his strategy will be, the fight is heading in one direction. And Ilia Topuria is already pointing that way.